Earlier today, I released a video around SoFi student loans and the article that Chris Hager at Data Driven Investing had made around student loans coming back and possibly driving a 2024 surge for SoFi. And one thing I noted in that initial video was the overall unlikeliness of borrowers being able to repay as a result of this new stipulation by the Biden administration, which is the on-ramp, basically removing all the consequences around borrowers paying back their student loans. Now, since that, I actually found a poll that was run which showed that over 2/3 of respondents said that they would not be repaying their loans in this next 12 months, which made me want to make a video about it and run through the poll with you to share some of those findings. Now, I made a tweet thread about this earlier tonight, but I want to walk you through the actual poll itself because I think that it's really interesting. I started off the tweet thread highlighting that interest has already begun accruing on these student loans as of September 1st, and the repayments are expected to start in October. The problem here is the on-ramp. So if you haven't seen my previous video, definitely recommend you go do that. Basically, the Biden administration has been continuously trying to block the repayment of student loans. And what happened was when the forgiveness was deemed unconstitutional, they introduced this clause that said for the next 12 months, starting in October when repayments are supposed to start, borrowers who miss monthly payments are not considered delinquent, are not reported to credit bureaus, are not placed in defaults, and finally are not referred to debt collection agencies at all, removing all of the negative consequences of people having delinquencies, of people not paying back their loans. The only negative that will happen is that the interest will continue to accrue during this on-ramp period. However, since all major consequences are revoked during this grace period, many will just not repay their loans at all. So this was a poll that was done by intelligent.com on August 25th last week, and the poll was run among 1,000 borrowers of student loans, and 62% of them that were surveyed said that they would be open to boycotting loan repayment. They either said that they were somewhat likely or highly likely to boycott student loan repayment, basically not paying back their loans. Now, interestingly, 50% of them believe that a boycott would lead to a total debt forgiveness. However, the vast majority of respondents said that this would bring attention to the student debt conversation. Many respondents were somewhat likely believing that they would get some federal student loan debt forgiven, and many still believe that they would help elect politicians that believed in student loan forgiveness. And so obviously this is a political point as well, because candidates in the future are also going to run on that platform of forgiveness. It's already validated by the borrowers that they want to influence the politicians' decisions. This poll then splits some of the respondents into two categories: those unlikely to participate in a boycott, so those people who are going to continuously pay back their loans, and those likely to participate in a boycott, meaning people who would not really pay back their loans. Now, I'm going to read some of the responses of both of these cohorts, starting with those unlikely to participate in a boycott. You know, they wanted more information around the boycott before considering it. They highlighted that boycotting doesn't make your loans go away. It only puts you in arrears and potentially hurts your credit. They're worried about what happens if they don't pay. They're worried about risking their livelihood. They think the next batch of politicians could do even worse. And they overall don't think that it's going to make a difference. One respondent said, "I don't think the government ever had the intention of loan forgiveness. It was just a campaign promise." So that's pretty charged. And I think we get equally charged sentiment from the other cohort, those likely to participate in a boycott. They said, "I simply don't have the money. We have not been paying for so long, so why not just do away with student loans altogether?" This was one that surprised me that I included in the tweet thread. The other respondent said, "Because I think some loans are predatory and unfair. I can't afford to pay for one thing, and I agree with the boycott." And finally, another respondent highlighted, "Me and my friends were not able to receive federal student aid as we normally do. Some of us are not able to attend school anymore because we simply can't pay tuition that's only $1,200. And this, I think, was an overall theme. 3 in 4 borrowers taking on extra work for preparation in payments resuming. So basically, of these respondents, they were asked, how do you plan on paying back? And over 50% of them said they had or they were going to start a side hustle. And about 34% of them said that they're going to take on more hours at work. 49% of people in this poll said that they would not be able to afford loan payments. So nearly half of respondents said that they probably won't or they definitely won't be able to make payments in October. And interestingly, when asked what they thought their payment would be starting in October. 21% said they didn't know. And the majority of people somewhere fell between $0 and $300 on average. One thing I did say in my tweet thread is that while the on-ramp is definitely not positive overall for student loan providers such as SoFi, some counterpoints that apply to SoFi specifically is number one, SoFi services the highest quality borrowers who are fiscally conscious. So basically, if you have a high FICO score, generally means that you pay attention to your credit score, you pay bills on time, you're actually a financially responsible person. And overall, you care about building your credit, right? That's what that measures. And so the FICO score is an indication of how financially responsible you are. Number two, the average SoFi borrower has a high take-home salary, about $173K on average, far more than the average American, and probably far, far more than the people that were considered in this poll. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of respondents in this poll said that they couldn't afford it, but the average SoFi borrower would be able to afford it through their disposable income in general, right? So this could be a unique case for SoFi borrowers where they just pay it back because they have the disposable income to do so, and they don't want to take a negative credit hit because they actually care about that FICO number. The third thing that I mentioned in the tweet thread was that the average SoFi student loan is on a graduate level rather than an undergraduate level. So these are highly specialized individuals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, generally people with higher student loans, yes, but also higher pay and a higher ability to repay those loans in general, right? So I think that it's still going to lead to fewer originations for SoFi. It's still not great, and it's still a hurdle that the administration put forward. I don't really know if there is a resolution, and time will tell to see just how much this is going to hurt SoFi. What I do think is that it will hurt SoFi disproportionately less than it will hurt other student loan providers just because SoFi has such a high quality borrower on average. But I think the wider point remains, and I mentioned this in the thread as well, I think it's human psychology to a certain degree that if there is an easy route, there's going to be people who are less disciplined, maybe less financially savvy overall, that will take that easy route. Even if it is, a very small percentage in terms of the interest accrual, people will say, okay, I want to push this problem into next year. I want to kick the can down the road for a year, and I will just choose not to repay and choose to defer that out, knowing full well that I have negative repercussions as a result of that from an interest accrual perspective. I can make that decision, and that's a cost benefit that I can make. Even if I have the disposable income to pay back that loan, it's a decision that I can make. And the reason for that is because all of the other consequences have been removed. And so overall, I think that's the negative point, is to say that, well, even if I can afford it, I don't want to make the payment right now, and the interest accrual is going to be marginal, and I can afford that later on. I want to focus on other payments that I want to make, right? Even if I have, let's say, a home renovation or something like that, I can choose to defer my student loans for 6 months, work on my home renovation, and then worry about that afterwards. Just because the government is offering you this break, basically, where you have a get out of jail free card when it comes to paying off your student loan. So, time will tell. We'll see what happens with regards to new originations. I think all eyes are going to be on Q4 with regards to the originations number. Definitely check out the initial video I made. It's more structured. This is more me riffing based on that thread and based on that poll that I was reading earlier tonight. But to summarize, long story short, I think SoFi is going to be hurt. There will be lower originations as a result of this. I don't know to the degree to which. It might be a fractional negative as opposed to a huge negative, simply due to the quality of borrowers that SoFi has in general. If I see more news around this, I'll definitely hop on another video and let you know. For right now, this is the Fundamentals Investing Podcast. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.